Welcome back, you little tarts, to the second video in this series brought to you by Bad MMA Math. Now, in the last video, we had a brief look at how the flyweight division could, and damn it will, shape out in 2023. And we are now going to look at one of our favorite divisions, Bantamweight. So, as promised, brace yourselves because this one gets a little bit salty. Now, I know I just hyped flyweight as one of the most stacked divisions in the UFC, but honestly, this is nothing compared to the row of absolute fucking monsters that currently make up the bantamweight division. I mean, look at that little killer at number 16, for example. He hasn't even cracked the mainstream rankings, and that little gremlin is at 15-0. Unbelievable. Much like with my breakdown of flyweight, but way, 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 way worse. I think that bullshit politics will really play a major role in hampering the division this year and result in us only seeing one title defense this year. Although I'm hanging the video on this on the hope that we might get two. So with a whole load of fucking about on the way, which I'm about to go into, this will lead to one of the worst clusterfucks we have seen since the logjam Michael Bisping created when hiding from this happy band of murderous contenders just a few years ago. Now, it's one of MMA's worst kept secrets that Cejudo will most likely be returning to get the next shot at bantamweight gold. And while this will understandably boil every MMA fan's collective piss, I personally feel that the King of Cringe should get the chance to get back the belt that he never lost, especially as the number one contender in the division isn't really worthy of a shot, and I'll get to why in a second. Plus, I kind of like the cocky little prick. Seeing his back and forth with Aljo will probably be worth the price of admission just by itself. Now, with Cejudo being out of action for as long as he has been, this fight is likely to take a while to get made, probably leading Sterling to sitting on the shelf while holding his dick, while the rest of the division shakes itself out, which secretly may be for the best anyway. Now, when this fight eventually takes place, while I believe Cejudo is a generational talent, I think he's been too inactive, currently looks like a pudding, while Sterling has been the complete opposite. Active, pretty strong, and a monster in the weight class as it is. So I believe that Cejudo will lose out in a relatively close but clear unanimous decision, with Aljo retaining his championship heading to the end of the year. Now, if this fight was taking place with Henry in his prime and active, I think I'd probably be edging him. But fine margins, people. Now, in considering a bantamweight outside shot, let's get to the logjam clusterfuck, which I'm personally going to love watching play out and may turn out to be far more interesting than who ends up as champion. Now, there are so many contenders in this division that could end the year sniffing around for a shot, and I'm really going to do my level best to justify whom I think will be closest to being next in line, or even potentially being an outside shot at snatching the belt should the cards fall nice and generously. Looking towards the lower end of the rankings first, and perhaps the biggest outside shot, I think a scrap between Umar Nurmagomedov and Ricky Simon, who despite the questionable grooming choices, who doesn't love a mullet, would be fantastic early this year in finding a potential contender for a title eliminator and a solid potential contender for 2024. While both these men are future contenders, I believe they are both at least 2 fights away from getting near the belt, and in a title picture that I expect to be slow this year for reasons I've already mentioned, after Umar Nurmagomedov beats the fuck out of Barcelos in January, will be fresh and ready for a new matchup, and this would be a hell of a fucking rumble, and one hardcore fans would be licking their collective chops over. Climbing a little further up the division, we have men significantly further up the rankings and only an arm's reach away in Corey Sandhagen and Marlon Chito Vera, a fight that was recently announced for February. Now, while this is a great matchup, it did take me a little by surprise, as I was expecting a different fight for Chito, but it seems they are both matching up with the hope of staying active and maybe being the next in line. Wiley move, you cheeky slags. Now, a win for either man in this one could effectively be seen as a de facto title eliminator, with the caveat being that one of them will have to secure a win in spectacular fashion to jump the queue. Unfortunately for both men, I think regardless of the outcome, neither man will be getting a shot next, for a reason I'm shortly going to get into. Once again, however, it's a fight for the division that makes a hell of a lot of sense, and I'll be taking Corey to win by late stoppage. It is hard to sleep on Chito though. He's also a savage, and probably a better outcome for the division if he can ascend. Finally, at the top of the heap, a scrap between Yan and the Goblin Marab in what I would describe as the title gatekeeper bout of 2023 makes the most sense for the division for two reasons. Now, I'm going to defer my disdain for Marab for another video, and while this won't necessarily produce an instant contender, with Marab declaring his undying love for Aljo.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
And with Yan having 2 losses against the current champion, albeit one a candidate for a truly special Oscar-worthy performance and one extremely close, if Yan can dust the little troll in spectacular fashion, it may be enough to get him a third potential shot with whoever holds the belt in the division. Regardless, I think despite being arguably the best bantamweight in the division at the moment, No Mercy will have to get through 2 contenders to find himself knocking at the door again. Now, despite all this, my gut feeling is that the next in line, regardless of what happens elsewhere, will be Sugar Sean O'Malley. Now, Sugar is fortunate to hold on to this spot in what I think was a very close but very fortunate decision against Piotr Yan. One I don't believe was a robbery, by the way. A lot of people think it was, but I just think it was a very close fight. This could potentially backfire if the Aljo Cejudo fight takes a long time to get made. But if Fat Boy fails to make the cut, or the fight gets made in the first quarter of the year, expect Sugar to either step in or be the next in line as the star the UFC clearly wants to get behind. Now, regardless of whom you pick to find your way into contention, despite being well received as a rash on your bollocks the morning after a one-night stand, in a shark tank of a division, Aljo is the most well-rounded and should comfortably end the year still the bantamweight king, with the likes of Umar Nurmagomedov, Simon, and a few sneaky little pricks just outside the rankings that are safer down the road, providing much sterner tests for the Funk Master in 2024. Thanks once again for hanging out and looking at how bantamweight will play out in 2023. Join me again for video 3, where I will discuss the division I truly hold the most contempt for, men's featherweight. In a bit, tarts.